Happy Sunday, folks. Geoff Giordano of the APBA Football Club here with some of the foremost thinkers and designers in tabletop football game uh, hobby. We've got a week to go before Super Bowl 60, before the big game, and we thought, hey, this is a good time to kind of put an exclamation point or a period, if you prefer, on the regular season and the early postseason, and talk about some of these great games on the market, talk about their key mechanics, and talk about how these some of the oddities of this really crazy 2026 season will be represented in all manner of stats-based tabletop football games. These folks will be hard at work. They've probably already been hard at work. Some folks who are not here, like Ron Pizar, who does data-driven football. I know that he'll watch tape and watch games throughout the season and take notes. So we're going to talk to some folks here. We got John Turnbull, we got Tim Plum, ST Patrick, Brian Hafferkamp, Glenn Gutso, Eric Smith here. And gentlemen, thank you all for joining us on this. Is there a Pro Bowl going on today? I don't know. This is where the real football stars are today. You guys here are the brain trust, and hopefully we'll have some other folks. I'm wearing a Rocky Mountain guitar shirt. Keith Avallone couldn't make it, but he wrote a blog to answer some of the questions about that we're going to talk about here with this panel, and so we'll link to that as well as to all these games in the description here. Right off the bat, I just want to go around the table here and talk about the most unique mechanic in each one of your games. And I'm going to go clockwise from my screen here and start with you, John. Drive time football. What's the single most unique thing that sets you apart from the rest?
Just off the top of my head, I would have to say the extra drive mechanic. When I created the game, every team gets 8 mandatory possessions, and then based on the average number of possessions they have during the season, determines what percentage of that other 6 possessions that they are allowed to have. So I found a lot of high offensive teams don't. Sometimes they don't get as many possessions. It's weird how it works out, but I think having that mechanic in there, it equalizes the scoring and it gives that particular team a true sense of representation of how many drives that team has had over the course of the season. I know there are a lot of games out there that have either a set number of drives or run on a clock, but mine is based on the average number of possessions that a team would have during the season.
Excellent. Tim Plum, solo PTG football. What is your hallmark device?
So mine's a little different in the respect that there's 2 versions. There's the solo version and then there's the card version, right? So the solo version is team sheets, right? I like to call it, basically fits on a TV tray, right? You can play it, watching TV. There isn't really a game mechanic specifically. It's more of the depth of the statistics. So I actually pay for statistics. I pay for a lot of data. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you're not seeing played out necessarily in the obvious, roll a dice, move your mice kind of scenarios. It's more of what's happening with the player, how the players did specifically than a game mechanic. It's, originally designed off of Status Pro Football. I actually wrote and got permission from Jim Barnes and James Gordon, who wrote the solo rules. I'm the only person who ever got permission from them to actually use their game. So for me, that's basically, that's my big seller right there is, I've taken that original concept and gone 1,000 miles with it.
Very nice. And I have to note that I've got a couple of your seasons, and you card on PDF every player who put on a jersey in the NFL season. That's about 23,000 plus or 2,300 plus cards each season, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is pure insanity. People
Yeah.
ask, like, would you sell them in print? And I'm like, well, for about $250, you could get a card set. Now it'd be on drive-through, it'd be about $280. And I'm like, nobody's going to pay for it. I'm not even going to pay for the proof set. Let's, try to pretend to sell them. So, yeah, it's PDFs. And I figure if you want them, you can take them to your local printer. I just print, I just hit off, print off my own printer and cut them up.
Nice.
When I went specific teams.
Nice. ST matchup football, mostly college, but you've done some. I think everyone's got a $76 in their arsenal there.
Yeah, not yet. It's on my computer, but I'm asked all the time about NFL teams. That's probably the thing I get asked about most, and they are coming sooner than later, but they haven't come yet. But to answer your question, when I think about unique mechanics, unique there being the key word, the rare plays charts that we have are team specific, not game specific. So rather than having, say, one rare plays chart for the entire league or the entire game, every team has one. What that allows me to do is to sort of really drive down and pinpoint what that team was doing that year and the things that happened, not just the wild and the wacky, but if a player, for example, does not hit the 5% threshold to be on a 1D20 finder die, you'll go back to the rare plays chart and he'll be on there. So everyone who touched the ball can be in the game at some point, even if they're not on the finder chart. What it also allows me to do is say you have a player in college like Tennessee and Peyton Manning, okay? He went 0-4 in college against the Gators. So what it allows me to do is to hashtag a pass in the rare plays chart, and then the hashtag at the bottom will say, if the opponent is anyone but UF, it's a 20-yard pass, and then you add like a 1d6. If the opponent is UF, it's a pick. So it allows you to really drive into how the team played that year against everyone. If they were a good first half team, if they were a good second half team, you can really adjust that rare plays chart to do anything that happened in that season.
It's very nice. Arthur Franz, just in time. Now his whole game is a brand new. This is Breakaway Football, the guru behind Breakaway, which is an entirely experiential kind of thing, and it's very team. Kind of dovetails nicely with ST's team-specific rare plays. But every team of yours has a unique mechanic. Shoot yourself in the foot. Here we go again. Maybe your mechanic or is your approach to the game, but I'll let you answer the question. What is the most unique mechanic?
It's nice to be at the adult table. Hey guys, good to see you. I think treating a team as a system rather than a collection of individual players is probably the biggest thing that we're trying to do that's unique. Also the programming that's put into the game day deck, which allows us to not have dice at all, but still have the randomness and and proportionate probability that should come out. And that actually allowed us to create weather systems. So we have a snow day deck for cold weather and a rain day deck for rainy weather. And you don't have to change the way that you play the game. You just swap out the deck and now you're playing in cold or in the rain. And it really does feel that way. But yeah, I mean, like you look at Sam Darnold this year. Last year, he went 14-3 with the Vikings. This year, went 14-3 with the Seahawks. Perhaps caused the execution of the GM for the Vikings because he played so well for another team. But, if it were just individual player cards, sure, he'd have his completion percentages and whatnot. But I think, he added value to the Seahawks team in a way that really transcended his individual performance. And he probably accidentally degraded the Vikings by not being there and someone else stepped in. So even with all those same pieces, how does that system change? So that's really what we're trying to get at.
Very nice. Very nice. Eric Smith, Pizza Box Football. They just put out for the 21st straight year, Pizza Box, kind of under the radar there, but they've just done their Super Bowl 60 cards. So, and your game is very interesting, very unique in the canon here. So what would you say, the Smith brothers here, what is the hallmark of Pizza Box outside of the very cool box that opens up, which is awesome?
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, manufacturing constraints can draw put you into some interesting designs. Yes, so thanks for having me. We are doing our 21st Super Bowl event. And so, yes, people who go to our website can download cards play with their existing games. But we're not actively in print. We're not like, if you can find a game, great, play with it. It's not required that you have a field to play the game. You can actually, as we did as kids, we started out as paper and dice, right? So, like, I think a lot of you all have invented the games before you invented the parts. And for us, while the field is super cool and one of the things that I feel like actually is one of our unique things, I know that people who love football will love our game whether they have the game or not. For the mechanic itself that we did, I think there are two elements. One of it was originally we designed the game where it's not deterministic, right? The amount of yards that you would gain on any given play is a die roll, and much like Arthur was saying about probabilities, we are bucketing everything into the probabilities based on a team system, and then the success of your play is head-to-head play calling, but the result of the play can still be, I would say, performed by the player. And not identified by player number or name, but like say you get a 2-die roll, but in some 2-die rolls, the 6s will break tackles and earn extra dice. And so some people know the concept of exploding dice. That's the idea, is that you have the ability to affect, like it's 3rd and 10, you can still get 10 yards on a 2-die roll. It's harder. And so you might choose plays that might get you that 2-die roll, hoping that you'll get it, or putting yourself in a 4th down situation. So giving yourself these chances and managing your chances throughout the game helps influence the sequence of play calling. And so I feel like that's the one part of the system. The other part of the system is that all of our games are driven off of a histogram of where teams typically would have the ball before any snap. And so it doesn't matter if you get like a perfect play from your one or their one, it's a touchdown. And so that can, but the probabilities are weighted so that you'll get real season football results from your team. We translate those into team ratings, which allow you to have strengths and weaknesses to factor into your play calling. So that's our system. Like I said, we developed it as kids, and then built the team differences when we turned it into a game that wouldn't die. It was awesome. It's been super fun, and we have a community of people who are playing the games and sending me results right now.
Very nice.
When I played my son, he just rolls dice better than I do. He beat me. No.
Nice. Mr. Guzzo, Strat-O-Matic, everyone, most people have a lot of foreknowledge there, but what is really the thing that kind of keeps Strat-O-Matic kind of, one of those very strong legacy games?
Well, I'd say, first of all, and it's been my opinion for many, many years, that even more than the Strat-O-Matic baseball game, which is extremely popular, the football game is, in my experience, the best head-to-head game there is in any sport. It really, when you get 2 experienced strat football players, the strategy involved, both with the individual players and the team strength and weaknesses, and the ability for a coach to compensate for those weaknesses by the movement of defensive players, for instance, which is a very big deal and a unique part of the game, means that contest between experienced players, I know in my experience, and others agree with me, that when you're done playing the game, if you've won, it's exhilarating, and when you've lost, it's draining. So So that's unique to me. I played an awful lot of games, and I love a lot of games. I have a lot of games, but that's what's unique about Strat-O-Matic, and how we get there, is much like what everybody else is doing, but I think we might do it a little bit more extensively, and that is the research that we do. We also pay for statistics that are unique. We know, for instance, how many times receivers caught balls a certain number of yards in the air, and how many passes were thrown a certain number of yards in the air. We know which of the quarterback runs that mattered were scrambles and which ones were design runs. We know a lot of other things, that proprietary information, or at least information you have to pay for to get. We also pay for a professional scouting service that evaluates players. And it's just one piece of the puzzle. We have the stats, we have the scouting service. I watch every NFL game I can. This year, far too many games, with up to 8 games televised nationally on a weekend. First time in my life I ever got tired of watching sports. And I take notes during all those games. And I literally have hundreds of notes on each team. And after all, we're rating 1,600 players. So without that, if I didn't watch any games and I didn't take notes, I could do the ratings, but I would never feel good about it. I would always feel it'd be superficial, because the greatest challenge is, how do you make the individuals play in a way, how do you rate them in a way so the team will play as it played, knowing that the audience for the game includes replayers, other stock team tournament type players, and draft league players. So the ratings have to work best we can, both with the team concept, which we prioritize, but also in a draft sense. Are these ratings, the guys we're rating 6s of our offensive blockers, does that hold up across the set? Same thing with defensive players, same thing with running backs and receivers. We take into account things like how often a receiver is double teamed. That matters. You know that if you have a superior receiver like that, Randy Moss, for instance, you know that in Strat-O-Matic football, he's going to be double teamed a lot. Well, how's he going to get his numbers if he's double teamed all the time? So the other big challenge, I'd say, and sorry, I've taken too much time here, but other big challenge is just keeping up with the way the NFL changes. So many players being used in a specialized way. And when you're trying to rate a team, especially a Strat-O-Matic sense, where you got team cards, okay, you got a starter who played really well, was hurt, he played 9 games. You got a sub who came in, didn't play very well at the same position, started 7 games. And now, are you rating the player? Are you rating the position? How does the team work out? If you just rate the star as your starter and give them the maximum rating, will it still work because of what you're doing at the rest of the lineup? It's a fun puzzle. I love puzzles. It's a good thing I do, because it is a massive puzzle to put together a Strat-O-Matic football season. It takes me a couple of months.
Wow.
And that is after watching all the football, doing all the notes, and doing the very long process of even determining the roster and who's going to be all the positions.
Wow.
This guy's a left defensive end, or is he a right defensive end? Now in the NFL, they're moving guys all the time. In fact, one of the things I told Strat players who were really drilling down deep, I put a little question to them. I said, all right, how many guys who started a game on defense in the NFL last year played an entire game at one position? The answer was 0.
Wow.
All right, not a middle linebacker did not play middle linebacker all game. A free safety did not play free safety all game. A left side guy did not play left side all game. Not once, one player, any game of the year. All right. And so now what are you going to do? I got to rate this guy at 8 positions? No, the game's unplayable. If I try to rate, it's also unrateable, because I got to get the ratings to work so that the subs aren't better than the starters, for instance. Well, if everybody can play every position, you just can't do that.
Right.
So
That's-
that you have to make some choices, and the choices aren't hard in many cases. This guy, played 72% of the time at this position. Or when he got his starts, he was always starting here. Even if he only played 21% of the snaps at that position, it was still the most he played at that position for the game. And we have every game, every player, what percent of the snaps he played at those positions.
Mhm.
You'd say, well, the more information you have, the easier it gets, right? Not necessarily. Sometimes you have so much information you cannot be pure. It's like, well, I'm gonna have to make a choice. Now, how does it work out best so the team will play as it should?
Got it. And just to go back to your point about the rigorous Strat-O-Matic, maybe that's why Michael Caine, who is also cards the Strat cards, is always in Arthur's Breakaway Football final at Canton. So he's just a kind of
Mike does retro seasons.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
And so he's working with some obstacles that I don't have.
Sure.
Because the farther you go back, the less data you have, and really the less information you have. You might get to watch a lot of those old games, but you don't get to watch as many as I'm watching.
Yeah, I love scouring the internet for the old games, and it's just a completely different viewing experience. If you haven't watched a game from 1970 in a while, go back. It's a treat. But yeah, you really have to know what you're looking at, much more so than today. But yeah, the whole point of Breakaway Football, and look, we use Strat-O-Matic Football as kind of a template. I grew up playing Strat-O-Matic Football. I love that game. And, as an adult with kids and a job, et cetera, it's just tough for me to find enough time to really devote to it. So we wanted to build something that kind of played a little faster. And, that's where we came up with Breakaway Football. But yeah, we're trying to normalize across eras. Like, we really want to be able to play the 67 Packers against, the Mahomes Chiefs from a few years ago, and really kind of game out who might win that. And so that's really our focus, is to make sure that the teams play as they would, and then we match them up and see what would happen.
Mr. Hafferkamp, now you've got a couple of games, right? You're still doing play action and no huddle. So
yeah, no huddle is definitely on the back burner. Play action football is in full production, and I actually have a new one coming out with it's called Field General Football. I want to call him Jason Alexander. That's not his name. Jason Graham of the Jason Flash Football channel. You've had him on before. And his original game was called Field General Football. And he released it in 1997 as a board game and sold 1,000 copies. And he wanted it to live on. He wasn't able to do what he wanted to with it, and he was going to release it as Field General Football. So he signed that over to me, so I have the rights to that game now. Like everything, I own it, and it'll be published pretty soon. You can pay attention to the channel. I'll have an unboxing maybe next week. The proof is coming in the mail. So, but thank you. I feel like the 20-year-old pitcher just got called up, and I didn't start learning how to pitch until I was a senior in high school. So I kind of feel like, sitting in this room, I'm the eighth guy in the bullpen. So that's kind of how I feel today. But thank you for having me on.
Sure.
I'll talk mostly about play action football. It's pretty straightforward as far as a dice football game is concerned. The main goal was to have a game that you could play as quickly and as easily as you could play a baseball game. I didn't know why those didn't necessarily exist on the market, and learned a lot along the way about why. And also, I think we got pretty close. We're about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half if you use the full dice version. And that, to me, is pretty good. That would be a long baseball game, a longish, or a really in-depth baseball game. But as far as mechanics are concerned, maybe the most unique one is the variable yardage on the play result chart. So there are some plays that have fixed yardage. You hit the cell, it's 6 yards, and you just go on with life. But most of the plays have some sort of variable yardage where it's 3 yards plus a D6, 5 yards plus a D10, etc. And all the averages are based off of an average of 3 for a D6, average of 5 for a D10. And then That even includes, so you'll have a range of a low of maybe 4 yards. So a D6+3 would be a range of 4 yards or a high of 9 yards. So it just kind of depends on what you roll, which means that you get a totally different game every single time that you play, even if you play the same two teams. It might be a little swingy for some people, but that's where our team ratings come in to kind of push people up and down on that chart. And there's even variable plays for special teams and fumble returns and interception returns and that sort of thing. So you can get some pretty big swingy plays on those. So not very often you get a chance to run one back, but it does happen every once in a while. You get to pick up a fumble and scoop and score. And it's just there's no two games that turn out the same. I think that's really when I was thinking about all the mechanics, but all the other mechanics are pretty straightforward. You play calls or you have it call plays for you, about rolling dice or whatever. So
Awesome. That's a great overview so far, gentlemen. I'm just checking to make sure. Do we have anyone? Mike Jabral. Oh man, perfect timing again. Family football.
Again. What do you mean again?
well, Arthur came in right on time. Now you're coming in right on time. So, but
well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, and you've got a bunch of new seasons out. What's the thing? I think I might know what it is if I remember our conversations in Canton correctly. But what is the unique mechanic that sets family football apart?
Well, I had never built a card and dice game. I was always a PC guy. I still am. But seeing PC games and podcasts like Digital to Dice and there are several more podcasts that are coming up. I decided a few years ago to give this a try. So I looked at other games, and there are some super complex ones, some that take a long time. There are express games. I wanted to do something that was just so simple. The way I kind of pitch it is grandparents can play with their grandchildren. It's kind of a gateway introductory game that you could play. One thing I wanted that was key was 2 players. Yes, you can play solo, absolutely, but I wanted it to be between 2 people. And I wanted to develop something where you're not really going off a whole bunch of charts. You're just doing a couple's dice rolls between the 2 of you. And then there's your result or your coaching option. How do I proceed? And I wanted it just to be bam, bam, bam. You're creating a drive summary. If you wanted to write it down, it's over. You have a few laughs. You have quality time together. That's why I called it family football. I almost called it drive summary football because if you're writing everything down, that's what it is. I just wanted something simple, something where somebody, a young man today will go, I think the Chiefs are fantastic. And their grandfather goes, no, I want the 58 Colts. No, you're going to get destroyed. Sit down. Let me show you what football is. I want, to have that kind of bonding and humor. And not to say that the game isn't serious, but I mean, it's designed to be serious. Although I did put in as a goof ref ball, which allows you to have the referees disrupt the outcome of the drive, sometimes in your favor, sometimes it could cost you the whole game. But I just wanted it to be an introductory gateway into some of these other great games. Simple. It's free on Drive-Thru Cards, the printout one. And I wanted to do a board game version of it, where it's actually got a board and tokens. You can still play it the old-fashioned way, but that was the concept behind it. I don't want to go out and emulate what's already been done. I just wanted to make something. It's new to me, so I wanted to make it. With that mentality, I wanted to design it so if for someone who's new to it, you could start off on this, and then you could go to like SD Patrick's game or Breakaway or John's game. I just wanted to make it an initial starter kind of thing.
Awesome. So I know I was going to ask what is the most difficult mechanic to calculate, but let's first talk about some of the things that stood out in the 2026 season that's going to make it hard for everybody. I mean, the Broncos, Mr. Stidham starts, one game after,
I've got it. It's how are you going to represent the Jets having 0 interceptions on defense for the year?
There you go.
I actually did something for that. This is because that did happen. There is, if you roll a 65 in my game, there is an interception that's taking place. The Jets card where it says INT equals 65, I actually put no, or I can't remember if I put no or none, but that's the only card that I actually did that on. So I had a unique ability of doing it just the way I design my game, so that if you roll it, you're being, well, at least on the defensive aspect. If the offense messes up, then the Jets are going to get the interception. But if it's a defense, comes to the defense and what their abilities are, you're just flat out denied. It says no. But that's just the luck of the draw for my game on the architecture of it. I was able to do that.
What about, that brings up a point too. What actually happened versus what could happen, any given Sunday. What are your thoughts, open to everyone, on, delimiting what happened versus we still have to allow, maybe there's a 67-yard field goal or a 70-yard field goal. How much leeway do you all feel comfortable with? Or do you say that didn't happen? So that's not going to happen in the game for this season.
I'm going to wade in on this first, if I could. The Jets example is perfect. In Breakaway, we would probably have a special mechanism. We call those poison pills when it's bad for the team. And it would sort of invalidate the first time an interception came up. I don't want to put my thumb on the scale and say it's impossible for that Jets squad to have an interception because there's so many variables throughout the season. But I would definitely go back and start watching game film and figure out, did they drop a bunch of picks? Like, was it just bad hands? Did they not have a lot of opportunities? Were they getting sacks instead? Or were people just walking up and down the field on them? So I would want to know why they weren't able to get picks before really kind of setting that expectation for the player. But yeah, I think they should have the opportunity to do it, but it should just be much less likely than other teams.
Mm-hmm. The fidelity to what really happened is challenged more by football than any of the other sports because of how short the season is. The fewer games you have, the more volatile the statistics can be. And that's true year to year with football. So our ratings, even of individual players, may vary more than they do in the other sports because the shorter season and injured players on top of that. Now you're last place team is playing a fourth place schedule, and the first place team is playing a first place schedule. We allow for that in many ways. But so to say, we'll probably, I don't do the special team cards for Strat-O-Matic. However, I think it's likely that the Jets will be the first team ever, as best I can recall, not to have an interception on their team defense card. Now, does that mean they could not intercept a pass if they were playing a team they did not play that year? So, how do you imagine that? And so I think we're probably going to have to live with the fact that they're still going to get some interceptions somehow off of quarterback cards, where half of the results will show up. However, these days interception rates are so low that there is a chance that in 17 games the Jets will end up intercepting no passes, but there's a chance they'll intercept 4 or 5. So I don't know of any game that is worth playing that can handle the most extreme events of sports and say, oh, that's what's going to happen in this game. Are the Flyers going to have 35 straight games without a loss in 1980? Is our Minnesota Twins from 1987 going to replicate their home road extreme? That's a World Series winning team. But there's no game that's going to do that without contriving results. So there has to be a certain amount you accept. Although, in other sports, I mean, Strat-O-Matic doesn't put a home run on a card and gives a guy a W in the advanced game for a guy who hit no home runs in the regular season. And then Scott Podsednik, who had 500 or 600 at bats in the regular season, hits one in the World Series. Oops, so it's possible, and it's got to come up in a rare play circumstance, for that to happen.
So let's see.
You want to talk about Stidham?
Yeah, well, yeah. What's around the?
Well, we'll card him. I mean, we have some precedent, though I don't think it's in football. But Kyle Schwarber, the 2016 Cubs, was injured in the first game of the year, went 0 for 4, and was out for the season. Showed up in the postseason, played a major role in the Cubs' success in winning their first World Series for a long time. What are we going to do with Kyle Schwarber? Ordinarily, wouldn't get a card to get a computer-only player based on 0 for 4. No, we gave him a card, and we took his 0 for 4 and added that to his World Series stats and said, okay, that was Schwarber this year. Couldn't imagine teams wanting to replay the Cubs, and we figured this will be a very, very popular season because of the history. Couldn't imagine them wanting to replay the Cubs World Series and not having Schwarber. We had something in hockey as well. A player had missed almost the whole season, came back and led the NHL in points in the playoff, which is a very long season in itself. NHL playoff, you're going all the way. So he was given a card. So we have some reference for Stidham. It would have been a bigger problem if Peyton had decided he was only going to let Stidham throw 5 passes. But he has enough passes now. We rate guys all the time with as many passes as you threw in that game. So be able to do that.
So we do in our game, what we do is, so every position has to have a backup. Now, quarterback is unique, right? Because you can have teams where the starting quarterback takes every snap, right? And there is no backup, right? So we have I call it a D card, right? Which is the guy literally had no snaps. But if you're playing a board game, you can't. I feel really weird about the Brett Favre of the world, right? And I had Brett Favre on my Status Pro team for his entire NFL career, right? But he still could get in Status Pro a game +6 injury, right? So in our game, what I do is he's a D card where if the quarterback is hurt, the starting quarterback is hurt, he can come in and finish it out the game, right? So in the case of Stidham, I honestly, I haven't even looked at this year's stats yet to figure it out. But for Stidham, he would get a card. It just would be terrible. It would be just an awful card that you would not knowingly or willingly put on the field to start a game. In the case of the Super Bowl, we don't rate postseason because there are just so few stats to tie to so few teams that you skew things too much, right? Unless you rate just postseason stats, right? So for that, like I said, in Stidham's case, he'll get a card. It just won't be very good. That's the way we handle it. Always have a quarterback backup. I just feel weird about not having a backup.
Sure.
You're right. There's several teams a year, sometimes half dozen or more, whose backup quarterback did not throw a pass.
Sure.
Didn't even have a snap.
There you go.
Yeah, I actually I did a pre-play of all the playoff games, and I did a pre-play of Denver, New England, and I noted a disclaimer that everything's off of regular season information, and that take into account that Nix is not going to start. So, and I would put in parentheses, if Nix threw a touchdown, I would put that in my game result. I would say, understand, this is where it's coming from. When it comes to that kind of stuff, one thing that you're going to run into is if you're going to build a regular season, you've got to build it off of the regular season because not every team makes it into the playoffs. So you're not going to have their data, and it's going to skew those teams over other teams. So you want it to have a level playing field. The only exception I made to that were the strike seasons. I offer regular seasons of 82 and 87, everybody on the same playing field, regular season results. But I also have a couple extra cards for the two teams that played in the championship, adding in their regular season and postseason numbers, and removing it for 87, the strike information. And I note that this is for, if you want to replay a championship or if you're going to use those teams against cross era, so that there's a more even balanced playing field, because they're playing, 82 was 13 games if you counted all the playoff games, and then 15 if you took out the strike teams and season games and inserted the playoffs. 13 games or 15 games is more of a level playing field going cross era. But yeah, it's a tricky thing. And when you run into a situation like what just happened with the quarterback of Denver, it it just threw something into the whole equation. I'm sure a lot of these guys have already pre-built for the regular season, and now they got to stop and reconsider what they're going to do with that for realism aspects.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Just want to acknowledge Darren Hayes here from Pigskin Dispatch. He is a football historian, and he's talked about some of the games. Strat he's talked about, and play he's talked about. Darren, so you're more than the casual football fan, but you played some tabletop football in the past, I believe.
I played a lot when I was a teenager. I haven't played in my adult life. It's been many moons. But I appreciate your guys' passion of and your way of preserving the football history, and even the modern history, the prior game, and the legends that played it. And my hat's off to you guys. So I really appreciate and like listening to you guys talk ball.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you, actually, because it's your focus on history that helps, if not the designers, certainly the players go back, the players of the games go back and say, oh, this is how I might set up a season replay or kind of revisit a part of history. It just kind of adds that aura to, maybe help sell a few sets. Oh, I really have to get back into, that 1973 season for, any number of reasons. So that's very cool stuff. I think we were talking a little bit, to talk a little bit about postseason and momentum, and you've got some situations where you'll have, say, like the 79 Rams were 9-7. Do you give a team that made the Super Bowl, or say the 2011 Giants at 9-7, they get hot at the right time? Do you have to give some consideration to the final outcomes of the season, or are you pretty much, do you just do it as what the team did and let the replay do what it does?
Yeah, I think, if I may, I think in using the rare plays chart, especially, you can kind of tailor that into if it's the last game of the year, if it's within the last 3 games of the year, he completes the pass, or if it's the start of the season, it's an incomplete pass. But post-season success is such a small sample size that you can't really replicate it. And I think Strat actually handles all of this extremely well, in a sense that they also handle players really well that, say, throw 5 passes and complete 4. And so is he really an 80% passer? Can I play him every game then, and he'll throw 80 passes in a game? I think Strat cards those guys very well. And in my game, we don't really choose who's going to run the ball or choose who's going to receive the ball. You actually have to roll it. So the guy who has 3 pass catches for 90 yards, because he caught one long one and then caught a couple 8-yarders. He's very rarely ever going to come up because you don't choose him to come up. But for a game where you can choose who you're throwing to or choose who rushes the ball, I think Strat actually handles that extremely well. But you can tailor things somewhat in the game. You can have asterisks and hashtags and all of these things where you say, if it's this time of year, then this happens rather than this. And I don't think that's a bad way of doing it either.
We don't try to rate the postseason.
Right.
Obviously, for Stidham, that's what we have. And in fact, it's kind of fortunate in Stidham's case. He's just a postseason guy. We make a card based on this, and the gamer can decide to play what if and use Nix, or they decide to use Stidham in that game, if they play that game at all. But it's available. However, when a 9-7 team wins a Super Bowl, I am not happy because we're rating the game on a regular season. But you want, I mean, I think every game wants the best team or the team that won it all to be good, to show up good, not show up as a mediocre team in your game. At least that's my working assumption. And so we do have some discretionary leeway in the formulas that we use. Not a lot, but some. And we can adjust for circumstances. It's really going to be hard to make a 9-7 team look like a 14-2 team. But we look at the outcomes of games as well. They play blowouts. They play really close games, where games decided by special teams. So a team may be 9-7, or let's look at it another way. A team may be 9-7, and we have statistics that base a lot of statistics for offense and defense that pretty much replicates a team that's going to go 9-7. However, in a situation like where a 9-7 team really overachieves or seemingly overachieves in the postseason, we'll look back at the schedule, look back and see, they actually had a punt returner who ran 3 back for a touchdown. They actually have a field goal kicker, who is able to kick longer than others. This team probably on the tabletop is going to win an extra game or 2 or 3. In fact, they had those kind of games where they played a lot of close ones. 9-7 team really could have very easily been 12-4. And so we'll take that into account, and in the discretionary areas might say, okay, this team's getting the benefit of the doubt on a borderline call.
I'll give you an example of just the opposite, Glenn. Last year, the 24 Chiefs had the most number of single score wins, and if you look at their point differential, there's no way you can almost replicate them going 15-2.
They were a mediocre team statistically.
Yeah. And they played to the back of their card this year. So
well, yeah, and I must say, as a diehard Chicago fan, the Bears in this current year, I watched every moment of every game, and for almost all of every game, I would turn and say, the Bears are garbage. This is a garbage year. I cannot believe we're winning because we're playing terrible. Now, can we run the ball? Yes. But you can't replicate the magic at the end of the game unless your game mechanics have a way that allows you to replicate end of game heroics in some kind of way. And otherwise, I think you just have to go by the numbers. And I don't think that's bad. I mean, they may have been a great team by the record. They were not a great team. And again, I say this as a diehard. In fact, I didn't even think the Bears were an average team this year. I thought they were actually below average. They were probably an 8-win team. I would say an 8-win team. But if you can find a way in the game to replicate end of game heroics, I think that's a fascinating thing.
Especially like that one play he had in the playoffs where he ran backwards 20 yards and threw a 60-yard seed into the end zone for a touchdown. I mean,
that probably happened 5 times this year, though, at the end of games. You know, the Packers game as well at the end of the year. Same kind of thing happened. If you can replicate that, it's a cool thing. Otherwise, I think you just have to go by the numbers.
Yeah.
I was,
Exactly,
I'm sorry, Arthur, go ahead.
no, that's exactly the kind of thing Breakaway Football is trying to get at. Because when we build a team, we're really taking the regular season as a separate data set from the playoffs. So I think it's a great conversation. The regular season for us, we look at those, process those stats, that becomes the playbook. So they've got 15 cards, 30 plays, they've got the numbers, it's all distributed, right? So they're proportionally strong. But then what makes a team really famous, what makes them memorable, is usually their performance in the postseason. And so those teams that tend to overperform, and I'm thinking classically of the 2008 Cardinals with Kurt Warner, who damn near won a Super Bowl and they had no business being there. I've been trying to card them for a couple of years now, and they're just so frustrating because they're, in season performance doesn't justify their postseason success. So we're trying to come up with mechanisms that allow to explain and really give the coach the feel of how did this team actually make it this far? And so that's the kind of tug of war there, is how good is the team on paper? And we have to accurately reflect that, but also what levers and buttons can I pull and push to kind of maximize this team's potential in those critical moments? And that's really where the joy comes for us.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to say to Arthur. I said, this is right up your game's architecture.
Right.
To do something for Caleb Williams. And I want to tell ST that I've seen this happen with Caleb all year. I'm a Steelers fan, but when I watch Chicago, I'm like, this is such an entertaining team this year.
Yeah.
And I told my son, who's an Eagles fan, I said, Chicago's for real. He says, they're not that good, Dad. I said, they're going to surprise you. They're for real. And when they threw that touchdown at the end of the playoff game, I was shouting in my den, he did it again. And my kids come running out and said, my wife, what's the matter? I'm like, he just did it again. This is absolutely unbelievable.
No, it was.
Yeah. So Arthur, here's a tip. If you do the Steelers modern day, you need to add splash plays and fluke stuff, because that's how they win. They win with their field goal kicker and TJ Watt. That's their team.
Yeah.
Well, I think also this year's Denver was like last year's Kansas City. I've not dug deep enough into the stats yet, but Denver won. Their defense was good enough to make sure all the games were close when Bo Nix was not playing that well for 3 quarters. And then in the 4th quarter, Bo Nix played great. And they won game after game. They won a lot of close games. So that'll be another challenge. But at least in the Super Bowl.
That's funny. I have them rated exactly like I have Kansas City rated from 2024. So they're a +1 on offense, a -2 on defense. And it was like they just had just enough offense to be average and a really good defense that saved their bacon quite a bit. Which -2 defenses in my game is, you can only go to -3, and then you're talking like historical 85 Bears territory in that sense. So, -2 is pretty good. I think this whole conversation strikes at the heart of the challenge of being a tabletop game designer anyway, which is most of us look at the final stats and we make our ratings based off of the final stats for the season. It doesn't take into account the ebb and the flow of a season. My dream is to have ratings come out every week at the end of the NFL season so that you could play that week with the teams rated as they are for that week, which is, I have a life. I don't have time to do that kind of thing. But I'd like to just try it once just to see that 9-7 team. You can feel the momentum as they pick up. You'd be able to play the games with the players who are just there. Are there people missing? Did Dak Prescott miss, weeks number 3 through 7, and how does that affect the team, and how does that affect their overall ratings and things like that. And I think that until you can get to that sort of point, you're always going to have some teams better than they were, and you're always going to have some teams worse than they were, because you can't rate the ebb and flow, especially if you don't have like super, super duper specific ratings, which for football is really difficult. And then on top of that, the beauty of it is, I think maybe we should push it more, is that that's our perspective. That's the best that we can do from a designer's perspective, is to give you a broad overview of the year. A team that's 12-4 should come out 11-3 or whatever it is, 11-5. It should be 12-4. They should be 13-3 or whatever they're going to be. But it should hit somewhere in there. And to me, it's the player's job. It's the gamer's job. If you want the Broncos to take into account Jason Stidham or whatever his name is, I don't remember. Is it Jason?
Garrett.
Yep. Jared Stidham. If they want to take into account his relative inability to run the offense at an efficient pace, you simply change them from a 1 to a 0 in my game, and then you're going to get a worse offensive performance. So I think there's a time, especially if you're doing a more team-oriented game, where you just kind of have to make those decisions if you want that particular level of realism. And it all depends on the realism and like the fidelity of the game to the actual season. But there's so many times where it's just really difficult unless you do a week at a time, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, whatever it is, to feel the ebbs and flows. You know, I run into that with baseball all the time. I know it's not a baseball show, but you really feel that. A guy can really just suck for 2 months and then he's on fire for 4 months. And it's like, how do you replicate that? Because he didn't actually hit 307 all the way through. He may end with that after so many games, but you're not actually going to replicate the feel and the look of the way that season started. And it was really difficult. And then, you know, he had 452 the rest of the way. And it's really, we just can't get that in there. The player can adjust those things, however. So that's something that the player could adjust and could make happen to sort of quasi-rate the teams each week based off of their own performance. But I think until we get to the point where we can do that every single week, which we do get weekly stats and all that kind of stuff. So it is possible. It's just a real, you know, you'd have to put a lot of time and effort into that. And as long as we're distributing via PDF, it's cheap to distribute. You know, if your cards only, that's going to be an impossibility probably. But if you're distributing via PDF, I think it's a way to overcome that sort of challenge. That's the same challenge of how do you handle edge cases? How do you handle these different things? And that's one way that you could get around it, is by piecing up the season and the statistics a lot better.
You know, how do you, talking about, you know, everyone's starting kind of from that same set of numbers, but you do have some perspective. You all have a unique perspective. And I would venture to say, maybe I'm wrong, that you are thinking of your end user, your customers, in a particular way. Is there any way that what do you impart into your process that kind of satisfies your audience? You kind of know who you're tailoring, because obviously there are choices, a lot more choices than there were in 1957, 1967. So when someone picks up one of your games, are you going for my variabilities, you know, plus 0.001 to minus 0.001 statistically? Or is it a drive time football, it's flashbang, or family football based on team strength? Or Arthur, it's based on, you know, the Oilers are going to blow it again, or what are the motivators, I guess? How does that factor into, you know, all the numbers plus designers, you know, uniqueness equals the game that draws your customers?
I'll jump in real quick. I always liken it to the kind of car that you want to drive. Sometimes you want a station wagon. You want to get from A to B very smoothly, effortlessly, safely. Sometimes you want to drive a Lamborghini and really feel the curves of the road and like maybe crash it if you don't drive it correctly. And that's why it's so exciting to have so many good designers with so many great games on this call right now, because people can find the experience that they want. Breakaway football is for people who want to really drive that car, and their decisions make or break the game. And I've lost a lot of games because I've made bad calls. That's different from a game that really focuses more on simulation. It's much more about how closely can we faithfully reproduce what happened and really approach it more as a spectator of a very close vision. Like, I'm on the sideline watching this game from my youth, and this is amazing. So it's really just about what the customers want. And I think for me, we're just trying to create something that has a lot of bells and whistles that you can kind of manipulate and drive and get it to the finish line the way you want.
Yeah, I would also echo that, you want at least in our design, we want the player to feel like a coach, a player, and a fan all in the same experience, and it feels like their team. People who come to play a football game are really invested in what it means to play football or have watched it, but they come in with different levels of sophistication, and regardless of how sophisticated you are, there has to be something there for you to continue playing the game to the end and create that full game experience for you and the person you're playing with. And so I even say, like, if someone plays our game incorrectly and they have fun, that's still a good outcome.
Well, there's such the one thing here is, especially because there's so many designers now. I mean, I came out of the blue to try to do this. I didn't pretend to be a designer of anything like this, but I just wanted to give it a whirl. There are so many different versions and takes on these games that there's a flavor. There's getting to be more. It's like Baskin Robbins now, 31 flavors or whatever the number is. There's so many options now that you're more than likely going to find something that you favor. And there's a little bit of everything for everybody. I mean, again, the name family, I did it for bonding and have a good time. I mean, you can still do it solo and all of that. But the key is, I think, in general, you want to enjoy yourself and you want to experience something that, regardless of how the game is construction, whatever algorithm is being used, you enjoy yourself and you look at the results and you say, you know what, that's believable. I believe, I could see that happening, especially if you're doing cross era or different years or whatever. The key is to make it, okay, I could see that. I could understand how that happened. It makes sense. And you enjoyed yourself and you had a good time.
That's the way I approach it. I approach it as any given Sunday. Right. I also tell people in my introduction to the rules, and I do this a lot with, for people who don't know, I had this other game that used to be called Face Off Hockey that's now called Hockey Bones. And I tell people all the time, because people get really caught up in rules sometimes, right? And the rules can be intimidating. And I'm like, don't worry about the rules. Play the game you want to play. You're not breaking the game engine. If you get the outcome you want, you're playing the game you want, play it. I'm not going to interpret it and say, oh, you must do this. This math must be. No, just play the game you want to play. And on any given Sunday, anything can happen. It's like the Jets with the no interceptions, right? Now, I'm still going to have Jet defenders who can technically intercept a pass. It's up to the player if they actually want to have that pass be intercepted, right? My thought would be, if I was playing it, I would be like, oh, okay, he has a chance. You rolled the 100. He's got the 100. Oh, he's got a chance. No, he fumbled it. It fell out of his hands, right? He didn't intercept it. Just play it the way you want to play it. Don't fret and stress. It's a game. There are more important things in life to worry about.
I've had people contact me and say, "Hey, can I do this with your game, or can I make this modification to your game?" I'm like, "It's out of my hands. It's in your hands.
Exactly.
You do what you want to do. The rules say X, Y, and Z, but if you want to add A, B, and C or interpret them a different way, go ahead." I actually had someone on a dice roll. I call that's basically a decider dice roll whose chart to use. I had someone say, "Well, I've expanded on it." They actually mailed me. So if I roll this, this, and this, it's an increase or decrease in the odds of using this card or that card. And I was like, that's actually pretty ingenious. I was impressed. But I mean, I'm not putting it to my game, but they came up with it. Why not? It's once you got the game, you do with it. You could eat it for breakfast if you felt like it. It's your game at that point. Do what you want to do.
That's the
The thing
ultimate
for
answer. The
oh, go
ultimate
ahead.
answer is it's a game. It's yours now. Whatever is most fun for you to keep you playing it and enjoying it, why not? What I like to add, though, for people who want to then stretch the extremes of reality and still want statistics that were historical, I say just understand that every move you make to get the game further from reality means your statistics are likely to follow. If that's okay with you, that somebody who had 20 at bats leads your league in home runs, fine. But then don't say it's the game's fault because the guy who hit 4 home runs and 20 at bats led my league in homers. It's like, how many times did you let him bat? And so as long as the gamer isn't complaining about the very thing that he did to distort, then I don't care how he plays it. The rules become important when two people are playing each other. They have to agree on what rules they're playing by.
Right. I think you also have a point, and you're exactly right. The more you homebrew, and everyone likes to homebrew in this hobby, but there's a part of the game that happens behind the curtain, and there's a part of the game that happens ahead of the curtain. And I like to say all the time that I like to build these games that are extremely complex behind the curtain, but when you face the curtain, they're extremely easy to play. Uh, so there's a lot of stuff happening behind the curtain. And the guy that's just like, well, I'm just going to add this one homebrew here and this one homebrew here. You don't exactly know what you're impacting behind the curtain.
Right.
That's going to be a chain reaction of impact that goes all along the veins of the game. So am I for them doing it? Yes, absolutely. But like you said, when the stats don't come out right, however they define right, I don't think the games can be blamed for that. I don't think the game designers can necessarily be blamed for that. And in baseball, especially, Glenn, we see it all the time where even when they follow the rules to the T and they say the stats aren't right, it's easy to then ask, well, are you stealing it enough with guys who can't steal? Are you going to hit and run enough with guys who can't hit and run well, who have low hit and run ratings? Are you going to take the extra base enough with guys who have lower run ranges? Are you going to bring in the exact same pitchers every single game that were actually brought in at the exact same time? Well, all these answers are going to be no, because it's a game and we kind of operate it like we want to operate it. So I think the expectations of accuracy almost have to go down a little bit, but you expect a game to be realistic.
Right.
And by realistic, I say that Carlton should be a pretty good pitcher. I say that Andre Dawson should hit some home runs. I say the Lou Brock should be kind of fast. I mean, this is a thing. But if you're saying, well, he had 92 steals and I only got 89, I think you're probably worried about the wrong thing to some degree. And I think it's almost an impossibility to hit. In fact, when someone hits it, it's an interesting thing in the hobby. When someone hits like an exact final score, they always say and praise the game, like, wow, your game, I hit the exact final score. And I'm always a little embarrassed by that because I have to come back and say, I'm sorry, that's probably just luck. Like, that's probably not my game.
It wasn't designed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, because the odds of it happening aren't because it's a wonderful game. It's just like everything has to fall a certain way for you to hit it on the dot. And it's going to happen every so often, and it's not going to happen more times than not in every game because you're sort of playing the games. There is some variation that should happen. And it's a tough relationship. It's the hardest part of the relationship between the people who design the games and the people who play the games. It are the expectations of the game.
Well, I know Hal Richmond is very much a stat guy, a numbers guy, but he has always said, doesn't matter how statistically accurate you are, if the game's not fun to play.
Right.
So
Right.
for him, it had to be statistical. It had statistical integrity. That's the
Yes.
word I use. You know, it's not statistical precision. Statistical integrity. But once it has that, the very most important next thing is that it's fun.
That's right.
Yeah, I think for play action football, it's I'm gonna say a word and it's not gonna mean what you think it means. So I'm gonna call it narrative driven. And I think we think of history maker baseball or play games. When we think of narrative driven, I think they've kind of taken that space. But my games are statistical simulations, just like everybody's are. But what I want to do is I want to put the narrative into the hands of the gamer. So I want to faithfully reproduce the sport. So football is faithfully reproduced for that season that you buy play action football. And I run all the numbers and, all the percentages work and the teams moving up and down the play results chart work so that you get a feel of a team that's a -2 defense is really, really difficult to move the ball against. A team with a +3 offense is going to be off the charts, like 2007 Patriots. So they're just going to be really difficult to stop. But ultimately, I grew up playing video games, and Madden gave me they faithfully reproduced mostly football for that era, whatever you're playing. But I had a controller in my hand where I could say, I'm just going to run the crap out of the ball 50 times, and I'm going to see where this takes this team. Or I'm going to throw the ball 48 times. I know they only throw it 20 times a game, but I'm going to throw it 48 times a game, and I'm going to see where this takes me. So I have that level of control, even though I believe that I'm playing and making those decisions within a faithfully reproduced universe where the right defensive end coming off the edge is their best player on defense. And it feels like that, right? And now I get to make some decisions along the way about how that's going to go. Now, field general football is going to be a lot more decision making like that. But even in play action football, you can still call plays and choose. You can run it however you want to. But I think that allows the gamer to be able to create the sort of narrative that they want within the game. And I think that there's a really important aspect of that where they're not slaves to the card or slaves to the rating. The rating is faithful to the person, it's faithful to the team, but you should be able to lean into that. You should be able to throw more or pass more, or run the ball more. You should be able to do this or that and push the game without breaking the essence of the game or saying, well, I've really taken this out of bounds a little bit. So my games here lately have included a lot of fictional components and sort of ex nihilo team creation and that type of thing. So it has to kind of fit within that universe as well if you're going to bolt that on to actual statistical outcomes. So there's a sense in which narrative finds its way all through every one of the games that I'm making. And if I have to really go back and look at it, when I made a football game, I looked at the stats and I was trying to decide on like ratings ranges, right? That's kind of one of the things we have to do. The range between the bell curve in the middle and the two ends is not far. Like there's not a lot of amazing teams. There's not a lot of like really terrible teams, at least in modern football. And so the bulk of the teams, 60%, 65% are in the middle. They should be able to beat each other any given Sunday. That's what we talk about, right? And then there should be teams that push a little bit easier to beat those teams. There should be teams that really have a hard time beating any of the other three teams, three levels in my game. So I think it's really like the drama of the story, because it's not about technical proficiency, because they're all so close together in most major sports. I mean, a terrible baseball team wins 70 games, 75 games, right? I mean, that's a lot of wins. And you have to, they can't just be craptastic. They have to be able to win games. And so they have to be rated to actually win games. So if everybody is smashed within this, it's what you do in this, level of 5 games, everybody wins this many, everybody loses this many. And so what do you do in this kind of middle chunk? That means that there's drama, there's story. That's where the story lies. And I think that what the user does to win games or lose games, you're talking about the Bears this year, what do they do to win or lose games? That is going to decide a little bit more the outcome of play action football, especially if you're calling plays, because you have kind of a carte blanche system to call plays and multiple different kinds of plays. And then even calling, how you call defense and stuff like that. So there's I love that part of it. I love that part of listening to people play. And when I watch them play online, that's the part they get jazzed about. It's like, hey, I have an opportunity to like watch this game feel like it's playing out in front of me. And honestly, every game that I've seen has that. You don't want to get in the way with too much bookkeeping and administrative and that kind of stuff. You want to keep the flow going. But I've rarely seen anyone get away from a game and say that felt like going to the doctor or the dentist or whatever. Most people are like, I feel like I was at the game. I watched the game. I was in the game. I felt the game. And so to me, just keeping that drama all the way throughout, keeping that user a decision-making process, making it feel like a game, as opposed to making it feel like bookkeeping or just working your way through an Excel spreadsheet or something like that is like a really core component. I think, I've talked about that years ago with you, Geoff. And so that's sort of the thing that I see going through all of my games, including play action football.
Oh, sorry.
That's it's just, I think it's an important part of anything that calls itself a game for there to be decision making. Otherwise, it's something you watch. Look, I've had games and enjoyed games that were essentially exercises. They were stat keeping exercises, they were dice rolling exercises, they were math exercises, and I like them. But to me, it's not a game until there's decision making, and it ought to matter. Your coaching ought to matter. Not that it will decide every game, but boy, you can improve a team, or you can hurt a team because of your play calling and who you're playing, when you're playing them, and the opponent you're facing. And I do think it's important, especially in football where the schedules are so imbalanced, that you're not playing most of the teams in the league, that you take into account strength of schedule. So the NFL, more than any other sport, legislates parity. We had 3 teams this year finish first in their division. They were 4th last year. Well, the schedule was a big reason for that. That accounts for the Bears somewhat.
Yes, it does.
I don't know. I have some faith in the Bears. I liked what I saw. I don't think they're going to come out flat next year. I think that they're going to be pretty good.
I do too. I actually think they could be favored to win the division again next year. They really loaded up on talent this year. Offensive line, skill position players on offense. Williams had a lot more to work with.
I don't know where you all live, but it doesn't sound like you're from Chicago to me. So. You know, I mean, that's deep, right?
Yeah. As a lifelong Bears fan, I can tell you I'm optimistic for the future. I just don't think if you would have asked me at halftime of every game this year, I would have said straight garbage. But I also saw things that I'm like, but I know they could be good in the future, really good in the future. And that was optimistic. Absolutely. I do agree with that.
They were a lot of fun to watch this year.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They were apt. And I will also say this playoff season is one of, without question, the best series I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been so entertained. Most games were close. A couple were blowouts and embarrassing. As a Steeler fan, embarrassing. But again, here we are again, going to the playoffs, barely getting in, only to be destroyed in the first round by somebody. It's like our yearly thing. We got in again, and we're going to lose by at least 2 scores. Okay. It's the same thing every year. But I thoroughly enjoyed this past season's playoffs. This is, without question, one of the best playoff series I've ever seen.
Oh yeah. I was happy that after I watched the current playoffs this year, I was happy that I included in the game a mechanic by which you're able to challenge calls. Because it seemed like the calls were more important this current year than they ever have been, or the lack of a call was more important than it has ever been before. And so there is a mechanic where you can challenge a call and potentially win. And it was one of the things that I added last in the mechanics, but now I'm really happy that I did.
And Geoff,
I don't
back
have.
to your-
Go ahead. No, Brian, please go ahead.
Just back to the question about, courting gamers, and I think that was the original question, Geoff. I think we've gone far afield. We've gone far soldier field afield. But to me, the gamers who are either coming back, right? They have the normal story, quote unquote, or they're younger gamers who actually are finding C&D through YouTube or TikTok or wherever people, Instagram, wherever people are posting stuff.
I'm one of them, and I built a game.
Yeah, I think what most, we have been so injected into the game, what we want, our decision making process, being able to throw the flag, all those things, that we believe we have the right, maybe, to have games that we can change the outcomes. I think that's part of what video games does for you, is you get to decide who has the ball. You get to decide who shoots the most. And if our games don't court that, if they don't allow you to be able to make those sorts of decisions, I think that's where even tabletop gaming should be going in the future, because there's, that's sort of that Euro game aspect. How do I want to play this? It's up to me, and my decisions make a big change as to whether this is going to go this way or this way. And it could be that the entire force of the game is pushing you away, like those winless Miami Dolphins. Can you get them to 6 wins? Possible. Can you get them to 12? Probably not, because the entire thing is stacked against you. It doesn't matter how good a decision you're going to make. It's sort of stacked against you at some place. But can I get them to 5? Maybe. They won a lot of close games, or they lost a lot of close games that year. Maybe there was a chance they could get over the hump and they could win 5 games and sort of reverse history. And I think that people want that kind of challenge, to be able to say, can I get my team 2 more wins? Can I just push them over the hump and into the playoffs? And then when I get there, maybe, just maybe, Cleveland wins the championship, like that kind of thing, where it's just, I feel that with the Vikings, and, can I just Darnold, can you just not suck for one game? And that would be great. And then maybe we could get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl.
Field goal kickers who don't miss all year. Maybe for the
Yeah.
playoffs.
So it's just, I think that gamers who are under 55 really are not reaching back to nostalgia, which we talked about this before, Jeff. And I don't have a nostalgic golden era. I grew up watching sports in the 90s largely, and it was full of stars and all the normal things, and it was on TV and all that, but it's not like golden in my eyes. It was sports. It's Barry Bonds. I love to watch him hit home runs into the bay. You know what I mean? It's just sort of that feel of sports where we're so injected into the sport. We played rotisserie baseball. We wanted to change the way the players played together. We traded cards. We didn't have a favorite team. We had a bunch of people that we liked to watch, and they were celebrated all the time, and we saw them all the time. So, I always say I'm a Braves fan living in Central Texas my whole life, and that's not possible, in 1968. So, it's just one of those things where it's like our games need to really think about and start from that place. How can the user, how can the gamer really inject himself into this game? And like you said, ST, like that's a simple mechanism. I get to throw the flag. This is a play where I can inject myself into the game and say, no, I want to change the course of this game. I'm not just going to let it wash over me. I'm going to actually move possibly the decision of this game. I get to run the ball out of the end zone. I can choose to keep it or run it. This could be a game-changing play for me. Like there are like a million little tiny decisions that could be added into the game where the user feels like there's a lot of agency. And I think for those who are coming into the hobby now, and for those who are just playing younger in their 20s, 30s, who are playing board games and card games, that's the sort of agency they expect to be able to have. And that's a really core and important part of what should be built into whatever sports games are doing from now on.
I actually went the complete opposite on that with ref ball. It's because of how questionable so much has been out there. It's getting to the point sometimes of being comical. So it's like, oh boy, here we go again with something that's just really, So I embrace that as an optional rule set where you get your drive result. Oh, wait, there's a ref ball possibility. What's the bad call? And I have just, it's a rare play. Ref ball is a rare play, but it's something ridiculous. Like there was a flag thrown and then the referee gets on his microphone and says, there is no foul on the play for fill in the blanks. And now you're stuck punting, a no call or a wrong call, or they scored a touchdown because they were inched forward. I mean, I make it ridiculous because that's what sometimes it feels like. So I made it comical. It could be aggravating if you needed the play, but if you're willing to potentially win or lose a game because of nonsense, it's there, but it's done as a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. So it's good for a laugh.
Does that happen based on a user making a choice, or does that just happen with the rolls themselves?
It's with the rolls. So basically, if you roll anywhere in the 50s when you're doing the drive result, so I have it's 6-sided dice and a 10 on a 1 base. So if you roll anywhere in the 50s, you stop and you look at a ref ball chart. It's just 6 possibilities, but it will ask you, is the team you favor? Because you declare a team that is going to get the ref ball favoritism before you play. It will ask you, are you on offense or defense? And if you're not, then it's a punt. But if you are, then you just read what it says. So it's just inserted for, all of a sudden the draw. You might get a chance to, it would have been 4th down, but now you get to continue the drive. Or now you're forced punting, but if you're losing, the game is over and you lost on a bad call. So it's really just, it's it's made to be ridiculous
Yeah, well, you
because
could cause maximum frustration if you give the user the ability to choose that, and then the outcome is totally random and could just be ridiculous against them. That would
well, I
be
mean,
Yeah.
crazy
and I have no
frustrating.
problem with something like that. I wanted to embrace the ridiculousness of, you've got to be kidding me. We're still talking about these bad calls. Come on. So, I mean, you don't have to play that way, but it can absolutely change an outcome of a game.
Yeah, I would say as the original design of our game included penalties and gave you choices of accepting the play result or the penalty or whatever, and we removed all of that from our game through our playtesting because it was not at the time considered fun by the players to get into the management of all of that. It distracted from the fun of the game, which is like, I'm going to call a better play than you, and I'm going to, get to the line to gain. And that's really the main thing I'm focused on. And this sort of interrupted the flow state of the players. But that said, when we talk about how football has changed over the years, one of the things that we noticed is quarterbacks just throw the ball away and get the intentional grounding instead. It's a sack, right? So this year we finally just credited all of those plays as sacks so that your defensive prowess would actually be reflective of, hey, we actually set that offense back that many yards on that play. And we did the same thing to weaken the offenses because they're avoiding turnovers, yay, but they're still effectively taking sacks. And so that was one thing. So it's not a penalty in our game. We've just bumped up our what we label as sack yardage in our game to reflect how the game has changed and how they're taking these losses as penalties. But anyway, I'm curious how other people handle penalties.
The way I did it was, if you're going to play ref ball, you know what you're getting into before you do it. I mean, if you look at what it is, you know that this could happen and you're ready to do a goof. Now, obviously, I don't want to make a goof game, but I actually thought about making a game called ref ball in which you were the referee and you had to try to pull off doing this kind of stuff without the fans getting mad and the league getting mad and the media getting mad. It would be a completely different game, but I abandoned it. I probably just gave somebody an idea. I don't know, but
it's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's a great Euro game.
Yeah,
you could be a referee working your way up.
That's exactly what it is. But you want to commit ref ball, you want to do the bidding, but you also got to be cautious as to how you do it because you don't want to get to the point where now you're off the game or now you're out of the league. I just wanted to make a conspiracy, ridiculous. And I'm not saying that the league is conspiracy. I don't want anybody to think that. I'm just saying that sometimes when you see these calls, it's like, come on. So I made it so you know what you're getting into when you're going to play with ref ball as the option. You don't have to. It's a completely additional rule set. But just as a goof, I had thought about doing ref ball the original way I told you, but I'm just like, I'll just throw it into this game and let's just see how this works.
My game mirrors Mike's a lot. And he actually came to me and asked if he could make a ref ball version for drive time, which it fit into the mechanics the way both of our games work. So what I would like to see, and I'm showing my age with this, is at some point during the very end of the game, having a roll or something, and this is having the game end and go to Heidi.
Oh.
You could just put a homebrew in there.
I mean, it's like APBA's rain out.
Yeah.
In baseball.
I would never.
We have predetermined.
5 innings into a game. That would be rained out.
we have predetermined penalties that are just at specific places on the play results board based off of actual percentages. Typically, I don't know, whatever, somewhere around 10% total of penalties. And then you have to roll off another chart. Originally, only some of those, about half of those off that chart were penalties, so it sort of cut those down. I've since tested it with all of them being some sort of penalty, and then you have, it tells you what kind of penalty after that. So, and then it's a mixture of offensive pre-snap penalties, defensive pre-snap, offensive post, defensive post, and then it's broken down by different types of plays. So if it's a running play, certain penalties happen on all running and passing plays, certain happen on passing plays, right? And so it sort of breaks that down by offense and defense. And it's there's multiple steps, but the steps are very smooth. So it doesn't, I mean, it literally is, it can be no penalty, pick up the flag or move on, or it could just be roll once, roll twice, you got the play, set it, and go. So I try not to make them intrusive, but that is something that has grown in the game because it can change the game, right? That's sort of an outside of the offense or outside of the defense sort of thing that can manipulate it and change the game. And it feels, I know it's based off of players, but it kind of feels random if you watch the NFL week to week. You're like, why did they have 6 this week and they have 1 this week? You know, it kind of feels a little bit more random, like the teams are not necessarily more jumpy. Maybe they just got a referee who calls a particular way or a particular thing. And so I feel like the randomization of that is justifiable just because you have a random set of people who are doing your game that week. So holding calls that weren't called last week with this set of referees are going to be called this week. And there's really no way for you to fix that per se. These guys are doing mostly the same things, you know, every week. They're all holding. And, you know, it's what is the taste of the judges to be able to say, okay, for me, that's a hold, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I imagine you could set it as a pregame condition so that both players know the whole game. Hey, this crew is likely to call, you know, ineligible downfield penalties, and so you may opt to not to call certain plays because you know you run the risk of on a run pass option you're going to trigger that event, things like that.
So one of the things that we do with ours, and so in purchasing data, one of the data sets that I get is actually ref crews, right? The referee crews and how they call penalties, etc. So
Interesting.
we do the in the we use the standard, you know, the infamous status pro Z play, right? So it's the injury, the penalty, or the fumble, right? We figure out the odds, what are the chances of each of those happening. And then the team penalties are all the penalties called on the team. Every team is rated for all the penalties that are actually called for and against them. And so there is the chance of getting whatever the call may be based upon. Now, one of the things that I thought about adding was some kind of modifier, some kind of referee crew. Here's what you get. Here's how it modifies. And then I thought, you know what? That's just too much because you end up spending more time with setup and, you know, checking more charts. And I am very anti-chart. I'm very much put all the numbers on the player card. I can't stand charts. And, you know, our game is not really, you should be able to do the simple math, right? You really shouldn't have to spend a whole lot of time looking at charts unless you just don't remember the variable, right? And that's the way that I want to play the game. So I'm not adding more to have more referees. We have a challenge call in our game where you can challenge the call, and it's based upon what the odds were in that particular season of whether it's successful or not. That's pretty standard available information. It keeps it really simple, but not overly burdensome. That's the other thing about, you know, these games is I come from, like I said, I played status pro face-to-face for 28 years with a bunch of guys. And that's where I come from, right? So for us, it was an afternoon, right? You were like, I'm going to play John. Okay, I'm going to be gone for 6 hours because you know what? We're going to talk and chat and we're going to screw around. We're going to take a game that's going to actually take an hour and a half to play, but we're going to talk about everything else in the world for 4 other hours. You know, it was something to do way back in the day. My wife, you know, now I've been married for 38, almost 39 years. When we first met, she was like, oh, I want to, you know, my wife is not sports oriented, doesn't care, doesn't understand, whatever. She was like, well, let me get a team so she could play, so she could be part of my world, right? Then we had our first son. She used to put my son on her lap and play call. He was pushing coins around. No idea, right? It didn't matter. She never punted. She just pushed coins around. Now, 38 years later, my son played in our league. When he was 13 years old, we let him join. He had a team. He drafted, did everything. So it's, very family oriented. But again, back to that penalties and things. And, I like the idea of ref ball, like, some of the odd things that happen. But for me in my game, I'm like, I need to tone it down a little bit. Because for me, I'm also making a computer version of my game. Players were rated in 271 categories, most of which is hidden, but they're rated in 271 categories. It just slow it down, Tim. Slow it down. Bring it back some. Bring it back. You can really go crazy with this stuff. And you're like, bring it back some.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Geoff. Go ahead.
No. Just that brings up, and particularly Tim, and your point again with so many players available. I'm just kind of curious about how, talking about open usage. I mean, app is a pretty open source system. People do home brews and all that. But I want to get maybe into the idea, just to kind of circle back on, do you intentionally put some guardrails around certain aspects of your games? Do you have expectations for substitutions? Do you kind of guard against overcomplication? I mean, again, just because it fascinates me. I mean, Tim, you're talking about 271 ratings, and then you've got every player who played at least a down. I mean, how do you all kind of feel about putting guardrails on usage? You having so much variability, and yet trying to maybe guide the user. Do you have those as played players who would say, I'm going to put this guy in for this down in this game, in week 13 or something like that? I mean, team-based obviously is a different matter, but just in terms of kind of guardrails around certain aspects of the game, such that you try to guide the user. It's like, you can have some fun here, but we really got to keep things on pace.
Well, Strat-O-Matic,
go ahead,
as always, with other sports, have put guardrails on the outlier performances by people who had scant usage. All right. So using S.T. Patrick's example earlier in the day, the quarterback who completed 4 or 5 passes for his whole season. But we'll give him, if we're giving him a rating, he's the backup quarterback. We've got to have a backup. He's not going to be an 80% passer. But since he's throwing that few passes, it is mechanically possible he will complete 4 out of 5 in Strat-O-Matic. He rolled the defense card, he gets completions, he gets a nice roll on his own card. Okay, he's only thrown 5 passes, 4 of them were complete. But he's not going to get the kind of card where you say, I want this guy throwing 500 passes. If you want to, play him that way. Sure, if you want to do some kind of what if, but it would be, we think it'd be unreasonable for the gamer to make an assumption that if this guy had thrown 500 passes, he'd still be an 80% passer. Now, there are some games out there to say the numbers are the numbers. That's it. It's up to the gamer to decide, to control the usage. Well, the Strat-O-Matic philosophy is we don't want strat ball to be that is what people are playing to such an extreme where nobody's really happy with the outcome. The person who wants to play it that way, just adjust the card. If you're going to go that extreme, put some extra completions on the card and do it. But we think that when a game plays unrealistically, and I'm not saying precision, I'm just saying when it plays unrealistically, then the gamer usually is not very happy.
So let me jump in real quick. Sorry. So what we do, so for a quarterback, for example, quarterbacks are rated in screen, quick, short, and long, right? So if he's 4 out of 5 passing, did he throw 5 screens? Okay, great. He's an 80% completion on a screen. Well, there are modifiers to that, but he can't throw any other passes, right? So he's not going to complete very much. He can complete all these passes that are, 3 yards down the field, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, great. He's not going to get first downs, and there's modifiers because of what he's rated in terms of his, usage, plus the passes and the defender and all those other things. It all catches up to you. We kind of had that built into the system. I know everybody probably has the same kind of thing that, you've got the outlier guy with the odd numbers, with the strange usage or whatever, but it's going to catch up. If your game system is trying to maintain some semblance of reality, if it's just not trying to be, have some real reality, then no, the guy will complete, 540, he'll complete 400 out of 500. But I think we all build systems that are trying to keep that guardrail for those players. Again, I you can go outside the rules, but I'm not warranting the game for your, inability to play with some semblance of realism.
I have to go to ST because I know you often come up, your prime example of kind of having your play call charts as the 80 Oilers, right? Earl Campbell.
But yeah, that was the thing. I can't remember if it was 80. It might be 83, but it was the Earl Campbell example, right? So you've got Earl Campbell who ran the ball something like 363 times or something. And then you have Adger Armstrong, who is his backup. And you can check on this now, Geoff, if you would. I think Adger Armstrong ran the ball 65 times. And averaged almost a yard more than Earl Campbell. So how do you keep a gamer on every play that's 3rd down and 1? Why would you run Earl Campbell? Why would you ever do that? Why would you not run Adger Armstrong every time because he averages a yard more? But then you're no longer coaching like the coach. You're kind of trying to game the game in a sense. Now, can you ever stop a person from actually being able to game the game? No. If they want to game the game, they're going to find a way to game the game. When I was in high school, I don't like this now, so this is just a high school story. I discovered that in Hafner games, you could throw Dan Marino from 1984. You could screen pass every play, score about 80 points, and get about 800 yards because the completion percentage on the screen pass was so much higher that he would complete enough of them in a 4 down possession and you'd get 5 to 8 yards. Well, you could just 5 to 8 yards down the entire field. You can't be stopped, and you could score every time. So I would do it, but I found I wasn't really enjoying it, right? So you can game the game as much as you want, but the question as a designer is, how do you put in guardrails to really do that? Well, we have a rely rating. So sometimes in a matchup, things will be tested. It could be his gain. That's his yards per carry. If the gain comes up and that's the test, sure, you would want Adger Armstrong. But who did the team really rely on? Well, Earl Campbell is a 10. Adger Armstrong is a 1 or a 2. So if they come up in the matchup, Adger Armstrong is going to lose the matchup and get the lower amount of yards. So you really do want to do what the coach did. You want the ball to always go to Earl Campbell as much as possible and take that shot. With the rely rating, you can kind of do that. And it's not just a usage rating. There's a lot that goes into it, but it sort of pushes you to want to coach like the coach or to want the results to be what the coach would have probably called. You would want someone who caught 100 passes for 12 yards per more than someone who caught 3 passes for 25 yards per, because the player has a much higher rely rating. So the result is you're more likely to win the matchup. So you can put guardrails around certain things. It doesn't stop anyone from finding a way to game the game. I'm finding, though, as we get older, I think more and more gamers don't like to game the game. I think when you're young and you're discovering just a way to win the game, you find ways to win the game. But I think as you get older, you're much more fair and you're much more concerned about it seeming realistic. So I do think there are ways that you can do that as a designer. Yes.
And just for the record, sorry, really quickly.
Contemporary advantage of that. You want to do something here, Geoff?
The 81 Oilers, Adger
81.
Armstrong had a 4.7 yards per carry average to Earl Campbell's 3.8. So 1 yard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so here's a 2023 example. Baltimore Ravens. Gus Edwards was the main running back, ran for 810 yards, had a very nice 4.1 yards per carry, scored 13 touchdowns. Keaton Mitchell ran the ball 47 times for an 8.4 average.
Yes.
All right,
yes.
now, if you want to game the game, Keaton Mitchell's your back, right?
Exactly.
Strat-O-Matic rates runners guessed right and guessed wrong. And we just made sure, by the way, we looked at Keaton Mitchell's, how he accumulated his numbers. He never carried on 1st and 10. He never carried in a short yardage situation. He was a third down back who ran and pass on a pass formations against pass defenses. All right, so what do we do about that? We make sure Keaton Mitchell does not have a good card or acceptable card guessed right. And so you put him in. If you didn't make that adjustment, if you had a game that didn't have that adjustment, the defense can't do much about it. But in Strat, if you guess run, Keaton Mitchell's going nowhere. So you're going to use Keaton Mitchell in situations where the defense is almost certainly going to catch pass. He's going to get a lot of yards. He's going to get some first downs, but he's never going to dominate a game.
On ST Patrick's take on the 84 Dolphins, I can made me think of this on PC games. They obviously threw a lot more. So the running backs, even I think both their halfback and their fullback, but they like average over 5 yards a carry, because a lot of the time people were thinking that they're going to throw the ball and they give it to the back and he's going to make a big gain. So I've seen in PC games people milking that. I found out one by accident. It's a PC game, 2nd and 10. I was playing as the 05 Steelers, and I'm toggling to my quarterbacks in the game, and Randall L. threw a wide receiver threw a pass, but it locked me in to Randall L. while I'm playing the game, because once you're on that last quarterback, you're not supposed to be able to go back by the rules. So I was stuck, and I kept playing the game, and he completed because I think it was 1 for 1, but he completed almost every one of his passes. So I kept playing games with that, and Randall L. was just destroying everybody, and nobody could stop the Steeler team. I mean, I've seen, who was it? Second season. Actually, I don't think they do that, but in that game, they build a restriction that if you only run a certain amount, you're only allowed one run the whole game.
Right.
Or there is a limitation. So you can run that back in any situation, but you can't run them more than once or twice. And that is done for the game.
Yep.
So different, games have different ways of doing it. I thought that was a quick way of doing it, but a realistic and fair way of doing it. But the Strat, for you to dig through that information, I applaud you, because that's a lot of work, and I commend you for trying to create something like Geoff said, the guardrails, and making it realistic and fair.
Thank you.
Play action football gets around it just by creates more of a blanket kind of system, because it's based off of team ratings, as opposed to like team offense, team defense, as opposed to all of the plays being decided by individual player ratings. So I think it makes it somewhat easier. So we're basically creating a universe with a particular kind of gravity to it. Either the gravity is light or the gravity is heavy against you. So And then there's also when you're calling plays, I think this is one way that everybody can do it if you add play calling in is have realistic defenses. So doing realistic things on a play. So on the play calling, we have it separated by 1st and 10, 1st and long, 2nd and 10, 2nd and long, etc. And so depending on the situation, particular plays are going to come up if you're just playing in a solo mode where you're rolling dice to get the plays. You can use that as a menu for your own individual play calling, or you're free to just sort of call plays however you want to. And then if you're playing against a defense that's automated, that defense shifts and behaves a little bit based off of down and distance and things like that. And so you could run into a draw play against a dime defense. You could run into a long pass play against a dime defense. So as long as your defense is doing realistic things or your offense is doing realistic things, if you're playing the defense, that's its own sort of guardrail, because short passes, if they're averaged out well, are only going to go for so much. And it might be a special play that they break one and go far away, but most short passes are going to be, 3 yards to 12 yards or whatever they're going to be. So as long as you're sort of containing the gamer into these sort of pockets, that's what I think Tim was talking about, Gary or Glenn was talking about as well. If you contain them in these little pockets, they can't get too far. So they might be able to get a 12-yard gain or get 7 of those in a row, but they're not going to break your game by throwing screen passes, because the screen passes themselves are sort of contained into this. You realize this is a shorter pass. You realize throwing medium passes is going to get you more yards. There should be more interceptions out there. There should be always that risk reward out there. And the way that the defense behaves or the way the offense behaves should be a secondary sort of guardrail, even whether you're playing with team ratings or you're playing with individuals. And for play action football, there are individual stats that can be kept, so you can assign different things to different players. But there's no that's largely left up to the user to be able to say, I want to run the backup quarterback the entire game, and he's going to be my quarterback. So I want Antoine Randall to be the quarterback of the Steelers for the entire year, and we're going to just play it out and see how that goes with him. So because that leaves a lot of freedom for player management as well, whenever you don't base the outcomes of each play on the actual players themselves. So that gives it a little bit more of a fantasy kind of feel as well. And it's up to the player in play action football to determine how each player gets the ball distributed to them. You can play by the rules, and it's just your starters, or you can add in, backup players and things like that. I've seen that as well.
I think football has the greatest variability of what you can do as far as what players to play at each position. And Glenn came up with a great example earlier. Nobody played their one position for the entire game all last year. Now, with the express game that I have, the guardrails are already automatically built in. You're not going to be able to do, like for the Jets, if you roll defense, they're not going to get an interception. And my game with the dice rolls is going to be able to replicate what happens. And I don't want to say my game is dumbed down compared to a play-by-play game, but I think it has its niche in being a companion game. If you want to replay an entire season, you play your favorite team with a long form game, and if you want to play the rest of the schedule, you take my game, you take Mike's game, and you can quick play the the rest of them. So there's that compatibility between several different games, since there's so many out there for people to be able to choose from.
I agree with John. I mean, I did not design this game to be an APBA or a Strat or anything like that. I wanted something quick, simple, introductory. It can be utilized to game. One of my games takes 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. But that way, if you want results with like drive summaries, you can do that. But yeah, the Jets, you flat out with this past season's New York team, you cannot. Their defense cannot get an interception. the opposing team can throw such a bad pass that they do get the interception, but natively their defense just is. It's the only team that in the whole card set that's like that.
I'm going to go around the horn here, starting clockwise again on my screen. So, John, Tim, Eric, Brian, Michael, Glenn, and ST. Not that anyone's going to remember that, but two-part question. Two-part question. The toughest team, Arthur had to drop off, but he mentioned the 2008 Cardinals. Still, the formula isn't quite sinking in. It's not working. It's not, the team isn't behaving well in terms of calculating it for his game. But to everyone here, I'll just call it real quickly here. The toughest season or team you've had to calculate, and then personally, your most burning what if, Steeler fans, 76 AFC championship kind of a thing. So, John.
Let me do the second one first. Yeah, I would have to. I'm a Patriots fan, so no, that's okay. There it is.
There we go.
The old chroma key screen there. The 07 team really intrigued me. Trying to figure out exactly, can they get them to win the whole thing? And you look at the Giants card on mine, and you just shake your head as to why that even happened. But I tell everybody, no matter what game you have, an entire season of a particular sports is nothing but one long series of dice rolls that happen to come out in a certain order, and everything's going to come out completely different no matter what you do, and even if you come up with the same score. So the toughest season, I'm going to slant this a little bit differently, simply because I am tied to the stats that I can obtain, and ST will attest to this because I actually contacted him several months ago. The way my game is built and the stats that I use, I'm unable to do college prior to, I think, 2016. That's just the limitation that my game has. So I think the toughest, I would say, more of a disappointment or a what if, would be just the constraints of the stats that I use in my game.
Yeah, ST's going to have his own wing at Purdue for all the right. Tim Plum, the
Notre Dame, actually. Yeah.
Oh, Notre Dame. Sorry, right.
Yeah.
Tim, the toughest season or team you've had to calculate, and then your personal heartbreak.
So I think the toughest season is the 87 strike shortened season. So many players with, how do you rate the strike players versus the quote regular players, right? Do you rate them on the same scale, right? Because the strike guys only played for 3 games. The other guys played for 12 games or something, whatever it was. So there, and so I have it right now as one giant card set. Now I keep thinking about it and I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll just pull the 87 strike games and make that a card set, and then make the other guys a card set, right? Right now it's one giant card set. And I'm like, but what it does is it by the nature of only playing 3 games, the strike guys are automatically terrible backups. In reality, they were starters for 3 games, so that, to me, that's the hard one. Most heartbreaking, I used to be a Cowboys fan. I'm not a fan of any particular team now, so I'm used to be a Cowboys fan. And it would have to be any given Super Bowl in the 1970s.
Got it.
So I am married to a Steelers fan, and I lived in the Pittsburgh area for 7 years. My kids were born there. So, I have a very unique relationship in my family. Not only at the pro level, but the college level. I went to UVA. My son went to Tech. We are truly a house divided in all sports.
Wow, wow. Darren Hayes, who had to drop off the '94 Steelers, were his heartbreak, which ultimately I would not have, as a Steeler fan, wanted to see the '94 Steelers face those Niners. But in any case, Eric Smith, the toughest.
Yes. So actually, it's interesting because I did not find the Cardinals of 2008 to be that tough a team because it turns out that statistically, on a per play basis, they were actually quite proficient on offense and actually rated highly in our game on a team that's based on because ours is a team based game, and yeah, but the toughest team for me in my system was actually the Michael Vick Falcons, because what would happen is pass plays would be called and he would run for tremendous gains, and that confounded a lot of what I wanted to put on play results. And I just started determining that while he was doing all of that, that we had to have a lot more run play results and possible gains resulting from the called play calls on offense. And it changed also how we managed our pressure system. And there's a fun evolution of the way football has gone, where it used to be when you're under pressure, you were bad, but quarterbacks no longer are necessarily bad under pressure. And air yards have dropped considerably across the league. Just outcomes of those plays are they're a mix of good and bad. And where it used to feel like it was a defensive win to get pressure, now it is kind of like hey, now we have a chance to have won. But that's I feel like really started to confound our system because we're we did teams starting like in the 2000s, and so with Vic and the Falcons, the toughest, the most burning what if for me is mostly as a fan, and not necessarily. I was a fan of Randall Cunningham for all he had done with us in the Eagles, and then as an early fantasy football player, I loved having Randall Cunningham to Randy Moss and Chris Carter all on my team, and that team broke my heart when they missed that field. I mean, it should never have even come to that. That game, they were up and they were in control, and I was devastated by that particular loss. More actually than any of my long-suffering Eagles fandom up until recently. Like, it was that one's the one that hurt the most.
Man, oh man, even fantasy will let you down. Brian Hafferkamp.
I'll do that one first. The heartbreak is the '98 Vikings. I was in college and fully aware of everything. I was so excited about Cunningham to Moss and all that, and I thought this is the year. Now, I'm not that old compared to a lot of people who have been rooting for the Vikings, so they have a lot more stories than I do, and I've seen the games to the '70s, and so I know that it was a lot of close but no cigar. But but that's the biggest one for me, and it was a beatable team. That's the problem. It was a beatable team. You had multiple chances. It was a bad game. Yeah, I've gone back and watched it, and it's as heartbreaking as any game I've seen. And I lived through the Jim Leyritz home run in whatever that was, '96 or '98 for the Braves. So that was there were a lot of heartbreaks, and that was definitely one of them.
And
As far as yeah, as far as there's no difficult team to rate per se, because one, the ratings only go from -3 to 0 and 0 to +3. It's pretty formulaic in terms of rating, but the hardest teams to get right every year are in the middle of the bell curve. They're the 1-1 teams. They're 0 is terrible on offense or defense. And so 1 is a step above that average. -1 is a step above that average. So that's your teams going from, anywhere from 6-11 to I don't know, well, 12-5. Like you have some teams kind of in that range who are going to find themselves in that place. And so that's where the most swing happens in my games whenever I do long season replays or I do just score by score replays. You get teams that were 9-8 that lose 2 less games, or they might win 1 or 2 more games, and it can be kind of frustrating to get those teams. But when you look at them across the board, because I don't do points scored and points against, those are real teams, that could have gone either way. It was really easy for them to lose 2 games. It was really easy for them to pick up 2 more games. And so that swing feels right, but it's the place where you could see the most disastrous results. And fortunately or unfortunately, the really bad teams or the really good teams are the ones that perform the best. So I haven't gotten the 2007 Patriots to undefeated, but I've gotten them close. I've done just score by score and gotten them to 1 loss. So, and I think I can never make the Dolphins winless, but I get them to 1 win. So the extreme teams, no problems, but it's the middle teams that are always the most difficult.
And for what it's worth, the 2007 Patriots, I actually lost with them. We did a global APBA football tournament in 2014. There's the National Card Football League came up with a Skype method of play, and the 84, it was the 89 Niners, I believe, beat them because I didn't, the very last play, I could have won, but I called a medium pass instead of a long pass, and that was it in a game where every score was a possession. So bad coaching.
Throw it to Randy, Jeff. Throw it to Randy.
That was
Come on
basically
now.
everyone was saying. So that's how that went. Michael.
For disappointing, this may throw you for a curve. But I mean, 94 and 95 will be up there. But I'll be honest with you, the one that was the most frustrating for me, and Bill Cowher even said this, was the 01 AFC Championship game. That one. Now, the funny thing is, in 04, Pittsburgh beat New England. They played them in the AFC Championship game. Pittsburgh had 1 loss, New England had 2, and Pittsburgh was the underdog. And even Cowher said, I get it. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. I get it. And I got them losing that game. In 01, I read somewhere Brady was like, he was super nervous in that game, and he got taken out of the game. I don't wish an injury on anybody, but he got taken out of the game. And just watching everything develop in that game was just a disaster. I really think Pittsburgh, they played their game, they win that game. Now, whether or not they beat St. Louis in the Super Bowl, I would have gotten them losing. But just how that game went down was, it's happening this way. It wasn't like a brilliant performance by New England. It wasn't. It was a bunch of things that just happened. And I'm not knocking New England. I don't want anybody to misunderstand. But when I saw that game, I'm like, Pittsburgh should have beaten them up, and they didn't. And to me, it's that game. But I'd like to echo what Tim said about difficulty in building things, and that are the strike seasons, particularly 87. What I did was, with my game as a quick play, so I did player finders. So I took out the strike players. I went and weeded through and took out the strike players, and I did it on a 12-game basis, even statistically with the data to build these teams. And that was a lot of work. But what I did was, when I got the information, I actually, I'm sure Dave Cook will be happy to hear this. I own Action PC. I built those teams. I used Action PC. I created a playoff bracket for 82 and 87. And I added to all the teams in 82 and 87 their playoff information and I have my own database. And I actually mentioned to him this to Dave Cook at Digital to Dice. He was like, really, can you send me that? So I actually emailed him what I did. I don't know if he just wants to look at it, just for fun, but so I saved it because it was a lot of work. So doing that, and then I made a pair of card sets, not just one, but 2 sets for the championship teams for balance, in case you want to replay, because Denver in 87, there was, I forget the player's name, but he did not play in the regular season at all, but he was everywhere in the postseason. So I actually have the ability of him scoring in this game because he did. So for all 4 of those teams in the 2 seasons that made it to the title game, they have their own separate card set. And I'd note, this with an asterisk, why? And the idea is to play it with different seasons, different eras, so that there's a better representation. That was, and I don't want to go through it again. That's why I used a computer. Like, people have been using some computer games to keep track of their tabletop games lately, and which is actually pretty good idea. I did that just for my own private database. So if I do another game, or, I've got the information, I don't have to go through this again. But Tim is absolutely right. That is so hard to do. And how do you do it if you're going to, I've had people say, can you create just a strike season with just the strike players? I'm not against the idea, but how many people, what kind of audience is really going to purchase that? Would Eric? Would you actually? Oh, I thought I saw you go like, yeah.
No, I feel you. Like it's kind of like comparing 2 different games. I heard ST's trying to do a pro version of his college. I tried to go from pro to college, and the stats are just completely different, and the expectation per play. So I imagine the strike games feel that same way. Like what Tim was saying, they were starters, but they're not the same caliber.
Yeah. And on top of that, if I may add real quick, my game uses for ratings, God bless Pro Football Reference. They have a rating system for overall and offense and defense squad. And the pros, for the college, they only have an overall team rating, at least as of right now. But I adapted that into my game. So there is an offensive and a defensive rating for everybody. With that, I don't go back. There are a couple of exceptions, but I don't like to go back prior to 1950, because if you take 1940s teams prior, because their sample is much lower, those teams have such high ratings that you could take, maybe it's the Akron Pros, and you could put them up against the 07 Patriots, and they not only could possibly beat them, but run them over. So there's an element of realism where I've developed the engine where, like, okay, this is not going to work. You're not going to be able to accurately, the line was drawn. So I just stopped at the 50s, although I do have some, like the Akron Pros and Frankfurt and some of those older teams I did make them for collectors, or if you wanted to play in the 20s and 30s, I got to be fair. But realistically, if you were to take one of those teams against even the 07 Patriots, the Patriots are going to have a problem. And obviously with Iron Man versus, 50 something people on the roster, that's not realistic.
It's a normalization bridge too far, perhaps.
Sadly, I mean, the great thing about that, it is normalized, but once you hit a certain era backward, it's like, you can't do that. I mean, that's just not realistic. You got 11 guys taking on 50 something and they're running them over. I mean, no.
And be something. Glenn, Strat-O-Matic's toughest football challenge and your personal toughest football challenge.
Glenn, we can't hear you.
Oh, you're on mute.
For personal frustration, I'd like to have Michael's ref ball system for the 1975 Cowboys Vikings game with the Hail Mary to Drew Pearson, where not only was it a heartbreaking play, but it was very clear that Pearson pushed off on that play, and the ref threw a flag against the quarterback. As it turned out, it ended up being a catch for a 50-yard touchdown and the winning score. But so I'd like to have that one back. But and there's a game I played in Strat-O-Matic I'll never forget. I had the 68 Chiefs, very potent offense against the Jets. I was down by 1 point on my own 20-yard line, 2 minutes to go. And I moved all the way down the field. First down on the Jets' 1-yard line, but time only for one more play. Timeout's gone. One more play left. Bringing Jan Stenerud for his field goal on a 2D6. He was 2-11, and I rolled a 12. And so that would be like, all right, not meant to be. I don't think I was that calm about it then. But for rating players, the toughest seasons are the most current ones because they're using so many players in so many specialized roles. Because the offensive line and the defenses are on team cards, we have to be sure that the subs aren't better rated than the starters. So I get into situations quite often, I'm going to say 6-8 times a year at least, where because of the way rotation is played on defense now, certain linemen are in there only for pass downs. The starter was there on rundowns and replaced all the time, especially on nose tackle, for instance. A starter might have done so poorly at the job that he deserves a 0 rating. However, his backup had a sack and he didn't. And so now, if they're both zeros, the sub is better and everybody plays the sub, right? We don't, not set up to do that. So I have to give a guy undeserving of a 4 instead of a 0 because his backup is a sack or even a half a sack. Because if he's got a half a sack, he's going to get a sack rating. So that drives me nuts. The other thing that bothers me a bit is some teams who know they have a poor offensive line for pass blocking do not give up a lot of sacks because they make sure the quarterback gets the ball out fast. Well, Strat-O-Matic's pass blocking is based on sacks allowed. And so I'm in a situation, Green Bay had a team with Favre, who obviously can throw the ball a mile, but that year was getting the ball out fast because he had a really shallow offensive line. Matt Ryan, who can obviously throw great, in his prime, really had to get out the ball fast, 1 year with it wasn't Matt, it was somebody with the Chargers. Anyway, they had a poor offensive line and they compensated for it that way. Well, I'm sitting there and I've got 7 is the maximum pass block rating. And the team only gets 16 sacks on you. They're going to get a bunch of 7s, even though these guys were not good pass blockers. But that's what we had to do to have the team stats come out representative. However, we do, have a situation, I think it was Eric, or maybe it was somebody else talking about how, Eric, I think it was, who said, when a quarterback throws the ball away, that's really the equivalent of a sack, or takes intentional grounding. That's equivalent of a sack. Strat incorporates penalty yards for and against in our statistical analysis of the team for relative strength. And so that's yards, just as offensive yards are yards and defensive yards are yards. Penalty yards are part of that. And penalty frequency is also a factor in the penalty system. The types of penalties, 15-yard penalties, 5-yard penalties, you derive that from frequency in yards. But so there are limitations. There are limitations. This is a game that was created in the 1960s, late 60s, and we're now 55 years later, almost 60 years later, and the way the NFL has changed over the years has caused us to make some changes, and they've been labor intensive for me. Now we have receivers who can catch the ball double teamed, and we have yards after the catch, and we have linebackers now rated separately versus the run and the pass, and a few other things that make more work. But in a way, it's part of the fun puzzle. It's just sometimes the puzzle gets to be really tough, for this particular defensive line or for the linebackers on this team. But it's made the game more realistic. the teams play like they should play. We've got all pro outside linebackers in the 3-4 who are not good against the pass because guess what? They blitzed every time there was a pass. They were in pass defense 4 times for the whole season. You can't give them, if you give them the top rating because they were all pro, you give them the top rating for pass protection, they won't be blitzing. So some of the gamers don't like those changes because they used to play in a certain way. And they say, wait a minute, I got this guy on my team and you've given him a 0 for pass protection. He's all pro. I said, well, he's only in pass protection 8 times last year. This will make it sure that you don't leave him there for that. So it's a juggle and it's a puzzle, but for the most part, it's Allegro love.
ST, you've had some time to think here, so
yeah. Wow, stats. I could talk all day about stats, but I won't. In modern seasons, I believe in and rely on PFF quite a bit for things that I do. It is hardest to find stats for the oldest seasons available. I still want to make those, and I've sort of had an ongoing talk with the people who play the game, and they seem to overwhelmingly think we'd rather have the teams and maybe have them not be correct yard by yard, but we'd rather have the Irish from 1919 or 1924. We'd rather have those early teams than not have them. So finding information is a puzzle, but I like it. I really, really, really like it. And I travel for that. I make calls for that. I've paid by the page for repositories around the country that there are. It's hard to find stats for certain schools. I will not name them right now, but there are schools who don't even have them from the 1980s or 1990s. And there are schools who have them back to the time that the team began. And they're wonderful to deal with, and they're very nice, and they care about their history, which matters a lot to me. And but I really like the hunt for the stats. I mean, I really enjoy that part of it. And I would have I could not have made the game that I did had I just depended on going online and doing a search. It would not have been possible. And I would say half of the files that I have backed up, by the way, in 5 places. Back your stuff up, everyone. Back it up. I would say about half of the files are pictures and PDFs and are not online anywhere whatsoever. You have to get lineups. To get lineups, you're going to have to go to game programs from the 20s, the 30s, which are out there, but they're out there in hard copy. So you have to do a lot of things. I've bought guides on eBay. I've done a lot of things. So just piecing the puzzle together is the hardest thing, but it's also the thing I kind of like the most. The 2002 Hurricanes, in my mind, are the national champions. Period. I don't care what Ohio State has to say about it. Bad call. In a series of bad calls in that game. That is my heartbreak in college, 2002. In the NFL, it's not really a single heartbreak. It's that the 85 Bears just had so many injuries in the years after. It wasn't just one game. It was just a series of bad things happening. So that was hard. But the Hurricanes, 2002 STP national champions. Still to this day. That's probably the heartbreak. Yeah, absolutely.
It lives on, that's for sure. But that's
Oh.
why we play these games. We try to exercise. So 100-game series of your worst nightmare. If you
That's
can
right.
pick up, Super Bowl
Oh, that's,
60.
I mean, I won't even talk about, the Cubs from 84 or the A's from 2001 with Jarek, with Derek Jeter's little toss home. Ridiculous. Absolute nonsense.
Wait, my play made a play like that once in softball. Jeter's my hero for that play.
No, but yeah. I mean, it feels like my entire sporting life is all heartbreak. So that's what it's like. Yeah.
Oh man. Seahawks Patriots round 2 here. The Seahawks fan base sure has a demon to exercise, right? Who's winning this one?
Seahawks.
Yeah, my heart is hoping for the Patriots because I like May, I like Vrabel, but I think the Seahawks are going to win and win by a lot.
I agree. I think Seattle. I mean, I look at this kind of like last year. They'll probably fill each other out at first. It'll be a little bit okay, whatever, and then Seattle is going to explode. And I think it's going to be something similar to last year. I don't know about them winning in the third quarter without New England scoring, but I saw Seattle in Pittsburgh. I was at that game and I was in the end zone where the player didn't touch the ball. And I'm like screaming, it's a live ball. What I saw there, that game could have gone either way at first, but then you just eventually saw Seattle. And what I witnessed with them all year, I think this is going to be a massacre, not just a win. I think Seattle, forget what happened in 2014. How many of those players on either team are still there? I don't know. Because I know in 05 with Pittsburgh against Seattle, there was like one player from 95 in Pittsburgh that was still there for 05. How many of those? It's a franchise name, not a personal thing with the players. But I think Seattle wins big in this game.
If you look at what the Patriots have done this year, usually if you don't get them on their first drive, and the Denver game was a perfect example, regardless of who was quarterback, Denver scored in that first drive and New England shut them down the rest of the game. And they've had a lot of defensive games like that. Their defense is severely underrated. And I'm hoping that Travion Henderson has a couple of those big runs this game. So I think it'll be close. New England's defense is underrated.
I'm someone who underrates New England's defense, but I also know that there's an Achilles heel in Seattle's offense. It plays quarterback, and you just don't know what you're going to get. In the results that people send us, Seattle's still coming out on top, but it is. Sam
Darnold is 0-4 against New England.
Yeah, I don't trust Sam Darnold at all. I don't think his coaches will either. But we'll see. His best quarterbacking up until the last game have always been in garbage time, and so it'll be interesting to see what the game script is like and whether they will lean on him or not. And I actually do think this is one of those games where the officials' role before the game will matter.
Totally agree with who does the league want to win? I think that is a key question to ask before you begin the game. I don't trust the young quarterback against that defense. If you look at the stats, both teams basically in the top 6 in offense and defense. So statistically, they're pretty close. But if Matt Stafford couldn't do it, I don't know that Drake May is going to be able to do that. And the one chance that New England has is the turnover battle. They don't turn the ball over. Seattle, if they can't pin their ears back and come after the quarterback and they have to respect the run and play defense all the way through, will they be able to do it? And also, Mike Vrabel played and learned defense from Bill Belichick. And I think there's just something that permeates down through history about there's going to be something that Sam Darnold is going to have to deal with.
So you're saying it's going to be a ref ball game?
See, I didn't want to say that.
I think you want to. I think you want to. I think you want to know. Do they really want Seattle to win a championship, or do they want Drake May to become
the new Tom Brady?
Star?
The new Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I see that the thing is, I think John's right. New England's defense is underrated. But what I will say is, being a Pittsburgh fan, watching them play New England should have beaten up Pittsburgh. But right when they're on the cusp of getting a first down or scoring, they turn the ball over. And I don't necessarily contribute that to Pittsburgh. I contribute that to, I know it was early in the year, but I looked at that as Pittsburgh got a gift in that game. I think what it comes down, both have great defenses, but whose offense is going to perform better? And the way I look at it, it's going to be Seattle's offense is going to perform better. That's why I think May is going to have a hard time adjust. The great thing about New England is their coach. And I think that's a strong reason why they're here, is Vrabel. A strong reason, not everything. I'm not taking away from the players, because the players are the ones out in the field, not Vrabel. But I just, and I could absolutely be wrong, but I just don't see New England's offense being able to punch it through enough against that Seattle defense, when the opposite, I think Seattle's going to punch it through enough where they're going to win by 2 scores.
New England's had a great run defense, and I think the great matchup is you're going to see Christian Gonzalez and Jigba. That is going to be a great matchup to watch. Like a key one.
I've got them rated 2 on offense and -1 on defense for New England, and 1 on offense, -2 on defense for Seattle. I think defense wins championships. I think Seattle's going to win a game where they're equals. I don't know how close it'll be, but I think they win. They're the better team, I think, overall.
And New England has not lost a road game yet this year.
There's a first time for everything, because they were talking about Pittsburgh. Oh, look, they're playing Monday night against Houston. They never lose a Monday night game. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, there's a first time for everything. And there it was.
Yeah,
I'm not knocking New England. I don't want anybody to misunderstand, but
I did not expect them to be there this year.
Well, I don't think anybody, no one expected either one of these teams in it this year. So credit to both of them. But using the ratings I use, thank goodness to thank you to Pro Football Reference. The one team that was actually rated higher overall, if I remember correctly, even higher than either one of these teams, was the Rams, or the LA Rams. They were the highest rated team, if I remember correctly. Seattle was
number
second.
1 on offense and right there on defense.
Yeah,
the different teams. And for me, Seattle played a much tougher schedule than New England had. So that's where I come down. I expect, look, it's football. A single play can completely change the equilibrium of the game. But I'm expecting Seattle to cover the spread.
What do they favor? Is it 4 or 5 points?
4.5 points last I saw.
Yeah, I expect them to win by 2 scores. And I'm sorry, John, I know you're a Patriots fan. But
2 safeties is 4 points, right? That's 2 scores.
Dude, we said crazier things have happened.
Yep.
Crazier things have happened. I mean, any given Sunday, like Glenn said, I'm just going with the odds in my book. I think. Well, actually, we were talking about last year's Super Bowl. When I watched that Super Bowl, it reminded me of the Raiders-Redskins Super Bowl from '83, Kansas City against Philadelphia. Philadelphia just completely shut them down, and they never blitzed to do it. Now the Raiders did blitz, but that was just complete domination. It reminded me of that Super Bowl, just utter domination.
Guys, I gotta go. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Geoff, I
you.
also
Thank
have to sign off,
Right.
but thanks for doing this. It was great to hear all you guys. See all you
Thank
guys.
you all.
too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks. Really enjoyed the discussion and good meeting y'all. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeff.
you too.
Bye.